This is DW News live from Berlin. Could the Munich deal be a way out of the deadlock on Syria?
We have agreed to implement a nationwide cessation of hostilities to begin in a target of 1 week's time.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry there, but others are urging caution on the agreement reached with Moscow. We'll hear from the head of the Munich Security Conference. Meanwhile, stocks in Tokyo have taken another dive, posting their biggest weekly loss in 8 years. And researchers in the U.S. say they've detected gravitational waves, which have eluded physicists for decades. But what exactly are they? We'll explain. I'm Terry Martin. Welcome. An ambitious agreement. That's how U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is describing the deal he reached in Munich with Russia and more than a dozen other countries. The deal calls for a cessation of hostilities in Syria to begin in a week's time. The break in fighting should allow humanitarian aid into areas where it's desperately needed. And diplomats also discussed ways of restarting peace talks between the Syrian government and the opposition, though the future of those talks remains unclear. Now, they also failed to get Russia to end its devastating bombing campaign in Syria. That's one reason why many are reluctant to call the deal a breakthrough. Well, joining us now is Wolfgang Ischinger. He's chairman of the Munich Security Conference. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, as we just heard there, diplomats have reached an agreement on a cessation of hostilities in Syria. Could this be a step toward a broader peace agreement for Syria? Now, you mentioned the warring parties on the ground, but neither the Syrian regime nor the opposition groups were represented in these negotiations for that agreement about the cessation of hostilities. What needs to happen in order for this agreement to work? Well, we hope to see substantive discussions on these matters at the Munich Security Conference, but there are grave security concerns around the world today, from Syria and Islamic State to North Korea and Ukraine. What are your priorities for the Munich Security Conference this year, where so many representatives are gathered in one place? Well, it's been another turbulent week for stock markets this week, with heavy losses in the U.S., Europe, and Asia. Many major exchanges there started late into the week due to the Lunar New Year holidays, but that didn't spare them from being exposed eventually to the global market jitters. Japanese stocks suffered the most. The Nikkei dived almost 5% today, marking its biggest weekly drop since 2008. Now let's take a look now at some of the other stories making headlines around the world today. A 41-day armed standoff in the U.S. state of Oregon is over. The final 4 occupiers of a wildlife refuge surrendered on Thursday. The last protester repeatedly threatened suicide before he eventually gave up. The French President, François Hollande, has reshuffled his cabinet and appointed a new foreign minister. Jean-Marc Ayrault, a former prime minister, becomes the nation's top diplomat. He replaces Laurent Fabius. And Pope Francis is on his way to Cuba, where he's set to have a historic meeting with Patriarch Kirill, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church. The two leaders are expected to focus on reconciliation between their churches. Now, an international team of physicists has announced what's being called one of the scientific achievements of the century. Lead researchers from the LIGO project say they have finally detected gravitational waves in the fabric of space. Albert Einstein predicted the existence of these waves a century ago. Now, researchers say they finally have hard proof.
We have detected gravitational waves. We did it.
You're watching DW News, and remember, you can always get DW News on the go with our app. It'll give you access to all the latest news from around the world, as well as push notifications on your phone for any breaking news. You can also use the DW app to send us your photos and videos. Just download the app from Google Play or from the Apple Store. You are watching DW News live from Berlin. We have more coming up for you at the top of the hour. Do stay with us and check us out online at dw.com. There we have all our stories, and I'll be back with you again soon. Thanks for watching.